Hello everyone, welcome back to On The Fly. Today we are going to be taking a look at 5 coaches who I do expect to be fired by the end of this season. So some of these coaches are probably going to be a little bit earlier of a firing than others, and I'll sort of get into that a little bit later. But we'll start with number 5 on the list, and this is DJ Smith. So with DJ Smith, this is one of those guys where I do expect him to be fired at some point, but it is a big factor of whether or not the Senators make the playoffs this year. All the moves they made coming up to this season, it was expected that they would at least make a push for a playoff spot, if not get that playoff spot, and whatever they did in it was really secondary, but really just being able to make the playoffs for the Senators was a big step this year, and really what the moves that they did on top of that. But what they've done so far is they've had a goaltender go out with injury, and they haven't quite lived up to expectations. DJ Smith has been, this is going to be his 4th year coaching the Senators, and really when you look at a coach that's been there for a while, and that's sort of the other guys on this list, if they have no prior accomplishments with the team, it's not likely that they'll be sticking around. With DJ Smith, nothing to show for his 4th year coming up, and I think at least at the end of the year, if they don't even contend, he will be well on his way out of Ottawa. But it'll be interesting to see whether or not the Senators can make it, because I think if they do make it, it does come up a little bit more interesting for Ottawa, what they want to do with their coach, whether they want to keep him, because if they can somehow find a way to pull off some sort of miracle and come back in a really tough Atlantic division. The record is right now 4-4-0, so of course it is a little early to be saying if they're going to make it or not. But if they don't make it, I do expect Ottawa to be looking for a new coach at the end of this year. But of course, that still does remain to be seen. And coming in at number 4, we have Brad Larson with the Columbus Blue Jackets. So for me, this is another coach where he's starting to lose the respect of his team. His team is falling with sort of the additions of Johnny Gaudreau especially. There was supposed to be a year where Columbus wasn't necessarily going to be a top-end contender for the Cup, but they were expected to at least do something, and right now, starting off the season 3-7-0 has not quite been what they're looking for. So with the Columbus Blue Jackets, would not be surprised to see Brad Larson go. He's already been the coach for 1 year, obviously not making it last year, drafting relatively high. And it's interesting to see sort of what else goes on in Columbus, because right now Columbus is in a spot where they aren't necessarily going to be in a contending role. So they don't have to fire their coach. There's nothing really that's for them there. But at the same time, they do want to at least put on a show for their fans, especially with the new talent they've acquired. I do expect them to do at least better than what they are right now. So maybe that is sort of to fire up the guys to get rid of their coach and bring in some fresh blood to see what they can end up doing. Coming in number 3 on this list, and this is sort of where we get into the coaches that are much more likely now to be fired, with Dallas Eakins. The Anaheim Ducks coach coming in at a 1-6-1 record right now. So when you take a look at Dallas, they are in necessarily the spot that they want to be in. They've made a bunch of moves to get better, to become better, and I was sort of expecting them to be a wild card contender right as of right now at least. Have not quite been the case, and I do expect them to do a little bit better than what they're doing. Dallas Eakins definitely to blame for it. You got 4 seasons under your belt, nothing to show for it, much similar to DJ Smith. But unlike the Senators with Anaheim rather, they are going to be really quick on the snap call to fire you. So when it comes to Anaheim, I do expect Eakins to most likely be gone by the end of the year if he has nothing to show for it. Whether or not he will, who knows. But for me, Dallas Eakins has to be on this list, coming in at 3. And coming in at number 2, this is where we get into the coaches who I really expect to be gone, at least within this month of November. I'd be surprised if they're sticking around unless they can pull off some sort of miraculous comeback. I don't expect these two to be around come December time, especially not Christmas. But we'll take a look at number 2 on this list with Bruce Boudreau. So Boudreau is 2-5-2 to start this year. He was a mid-season addition last year. Obviously, they fired their coach, so Boudreau came in, tried to do as best he could. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough. Had to deal with a team full of COVID. So unfortunately, they weren't able to make the playoffs last year. But with that being said, this is another year where they are expected to contend, especially with the players that they have right now, and sort of where they are in terms of what their team is. They're an older team. They're starting to age out. And right now, when you look at Boudreau, they have not been able to do very much. So I do expect, with the next 2 teams at least, that they're either going to make a big trade to acquire somebody, or they're going to fire their coach. And I think the firing of the coach is going to be the way they're going to go here, just because their team needs a boost. And right now, it just hasn't quite been the case. So Boudreau coming in at 2 on the list, and finally coming at number one on the list, we have Sheldon Keefe. And with Keefe, he's a really good coach, and I think really when you look at it, the Leafs don't need to get rid of him, and I think what's going to end up happening is they're going to get rid of him, bring in Barry Trotz, and then nothing's going to work for them. Right now the record is 4-4-1. They're playing right now, and they were tied the last time I took a look. But with that, sort of what they've done, everyone knows the story of the Toronto Maple Leafs. They've lost in the first round the last 3 years under Keefe's helm. Coming in for Mike Babcock, all of a sudden the Leafs played well under him, and they looked really good with Keefe, and was really sort of inspired by him, what he could do with the Leafs. But with that being said, it comes to a time where it's either the GM going or it's your coach. And right now, it's got to be the coach. Unfortunately, if Shanahan wants to stick around and Dubas wants to stick around, they do have to get rid of the coach. And I think that's what's going to end up happening with the Leafs, because over the last few games, and especially throughout the season, the 4-4-1 record does not reflect really how they've played, and they have sort of been bailed out a little bit by the skill of their team, all thanks to Mr. Kyle Dubas. But at the end of the day, I believe that it's Sheldon Keefe that's going to have to go for the Leafs, and I don't think it's a good idea, but at the end of the day, they have to try and do something drastic, whether that's a trade, and the only other real option for the Leafs would be to trade one of their big four, and I don't see that happening, at least not yet. If, of course, Keefe gets fired, they bring in Trotz, and nothing happens after that, then it becomes who do we trade next, because Dubas has to try and do something to keep his job. He's got a contract year coming up. So with that being said, who knows what they do, but I do believe Keefe will be probably the most likely coach to go. I'd expect him probably gone by the end of November. If he's all of a sudden pulls off a winning streak, who knows? But the way the Leafs are playing right now, I very much doubt that Keefe will be sticking around. If you made it this far in the video, thanks for watching. If you'd like to drop a like, if you really like, consider subscribing. Tell all your friends in the comment down below your thoughts on the list. Until next time, see ya.